Thank you, Reverend Tony, for that wonderful introduction from my head minister and also my apartment mate as well. I want to welcome everybody here at 875 Post, everybody on Ace I Am Gather, and for those folks that are going to join us on YouTube at some point, we welcome you as well. And you know, there's no time like the present, so whenever you're here to join and hear our talks from A Course in Miracles, miracles can happen. So here we go. Okay, so the title of my talk today is Be Real and Heal. And I have to tell you folks that, wow, this talk was very interesting for me because generally when I do my talks and I prepare them and I get them ready, there's a lot of inspiration for them. And I have to tell you this, if I have to be real and heal, I have to tell you that this was a harder talk for me. I had a lot more feelings, trepidation and a lot of guilt and a lot of grief almost in trying to get through this talk and even prepare for it. And I had to, like yesterday was kind of a tough day for me in the afternoon, and part of it was because, I felt like, this talk was challenging me, which means that Spirit was challenging me. When I decided to do this talk and look for the readings, what Reverend Tony just read, I want to start with this verse. It says this about honesty. Honesty does not apply only to what you say. The term actually means consistency. The term, there is nothing you say that contradicts what you think or do. No thought opposes any other thought. No act belies your word. No word lacks agreement with another. And so what I was kind of struck by that after I picked today's topic about how, challenging this standard is. It's basically saying that our thought, word, and deed should all align at all times. And that if you're a teacher of God, that's what you need to do. Now, of course, a teacher of God is all of us. And yes, some of us take on different titles within A Course in Miracles community, but we're all teaching all the time. And the Course says that we're either teaching from the ego or we're teaching from Holy Spirit. But what I found is that standard was very, very challenging. And the reason I came up with this talk today was both for things that were happening in my external life and also my internal experience. So as many people know, my professional career is as a special educator. And that means that I work with special needs people that have all kinds of different challenges, learning challenges, and disabilities that oftentimes create very difficult behaviors. In other words, because they have learning challenges or physical challenges or emotional challenges, this oftentimes results in behaviors that are very harmful to themselves and others. And for many years, I've been in this profession, and I grow every year, but this year in particular, I became aware that I had been engaging in some responses to this behavior that have been what we might call enabling behaviors. That, in other words, I would oftentimes, when students would act out, that maybe I wouldn't deliver some kind of appropriate consequence to their behavior. And, this is okay sometimes. I mean, I wasn't allowing them to, beat other people or anything like that, necessarily, right? But sometimes I was letting things go that didn't need to let go, or not create the kind of classroom management system that rewarded positive behavior and kind of gave adverse consequences to negative behavior. And kind of like I said in my meditation, I was giving everyone a little preview to what I think the Course in Miracles says. And unlike some folks, I really believe that the Course in Miracles wants us to go within when we feel bad. And when we feel bad about behaviors that we're doing. Not to feel bad necessarily or judge ourselves. I don't mean that. But what I think the Course in Miracles wants us to do is to recognize that sometimes our own behavior is harming ourselves. And unless we are willing to look at that, we're not going to stop harming ourselves. And this is what I've had this insight with working with the students that I work with. This year on my caseload, I have more students with autism. And as some of you may know, I don't know if you know this or not, but autism is growing rapidly in our society. Some researchers believe, and I hope this isn't true, because it's a very, very disabling disability for some people. But some researchers are saying that by 2030, 1 in 2 babies could be born on the autism spectrum. Now, the autism spectrum is huge, and some people are even contesting that we should even use the spectrum. But a person with autism essentially usually has communication difficulties or challenges. That's part of the disability, and social disability. In other words, it's really hard for them to understand social interactions with other human beings. Now, let's be honest, we all have problems with that, right? Okay? All right, sometimes we all have that difficulty. How do I fit in? You know, what am I supposed to do here? How am I supposed to conduct this relationship? How am I supposed to be in this group? Blah, blah. We all have some of that. But they have it to the extent that it causes them great, great, great distress. In fact, you know, if you talk to a person with autism, they will oftentimes refer to us as neurotypical people. Okay, neurotypical. So that's how they actually have an expression for us, because they find the experience of being social with us so challenging. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that so that we're not, I don't really label people, and but I do want to acknowledge the experience of being a person with autism. So I have these people, I have these students now, and it's difficult. They have a hard time in a classroom. They have a hard time getting started on their work. They have a hard time socializing. So I needed some help. So I went on YouTube and I found there is a person I've been aware of. Her name is Temple Grandin. And some of you may have actually seen, there's been a movie about her. And she is an animal researcher and also an autism advocate. She's a professor, I think it's in University of Iowa State. But she's world renowned. She's given TED Talks and all this. And I just wanted to hear her. I've heard her before, but I needed a refresher, you know? And what's interesting is that this is what she said. She said that when she was being raised, her mother realized that she was different. You know, I don't necessarily know if they didn't have the term autism then, but she realized that she really had difficulties socializing, difficulties communicating, and that's how she became so attuned to working with animals, because she felt safe there, and she somehow intuitively understood their experience. But her mom was a wise person, and her mother realized that she still needed to function in the world. And so what she said is that even though she had this disability, that she was still going to have to do the normal things that everyone did. And she would compromise with Temple, but she still made her go to school. She still made her, for example, she lived out in the you know, the wheat fields of the country, the Midwest. I'm sorry, I don't know how better to say that, but you know, where there was where in the summertime people would go and stay with their relatives and stay on a ranch. So in her family, the children would go stay with an aunt or an uncle for the summer. And while her mother didn't make her do that, realizing it would be too traumatic, she still made her go for 2 weeks. Yeah. All right, and so this was really informative to me. And what it taught me was, you know, with my students that I'm working with autism, I still have to help them. And sometimes I have to be firm with them, you know, in developing supports for them. Yes, I do have to sometimes give them instruction, prompt them to the teacher, or a person in the classroom, or another student. We have to literally say to them, you must, you know, ask 2 questions with a classmate in class today. You must engage in, you know, try to say, hey, how was your day? Can you explain problem number 14, or can you help me with this or that? You know, so we kind of have to do some of these things. And what I've learned from that is that, you know, yes, we can be compassionate. and we can be empathetic. But at the same time, we still have to love them. And we still have to be honest. And we still have to be consistent. Because by enabling them now, they are going to have less skills going out into the world. I had this other experience with another student. Some students get these different labels, but let's just say that this student has pretty significant emotional challenges, regulating their emotion. And this student I've worked with this student more than any other student this year. And they're oftentimes coming to me and they get very emotional and they huff and they puff, and they're a 9th grade students, or they're just coming from middle school, and they don't like decisions that are being made, and they don't like that I have to confront them about their behavior in the classroom. Sometimes I've had to change their classes because of their behavior. So things like that. And the other day I had to do this. I had to make a decision to move them from a general ed classroom to a special ed classroom because of their behavior. And this isn't what we want to do. We want to keep all students, regardless of disability. We want to include them. We want to put them in general ed classes and be with everyone else as much as we can. But there's also a principle when it harms themselves and others that we have to pull them back and try to give them some more support, and so they can go back in. Well, this young man was very upset with me about this. And he was doing, he was huffing and puffing, and I was trying to be there with him, and I was trying to support him. But he essentially, made a threat to me, a veiled threat. Now, I wasn't myself afraid of, this kind of little threat that he made, but I needed to teach him a lesson. So I gave him a chance, and I said to him, what you just said could be implied as a threat. Is that what you meant? And he responded to me, take it any way you want. And I said, okay. I said, then that's a threat, and I had to refer him to the dean's office. I had to give him a referral, and he had to be suspended. Now, did I really want to do that? No, I didn't really want to do that. I want to just say, I don't want him to be suspended. I don't want him to be upset. I don't want to have the conflict with his parents and so on and so forth, or these kinds of things happening. I don't want him to be deprived of his friends and coming to school. But what I realized is I'm a professional special educator. I've been there. There's nothing you can say to me that hasn't been said at this point in my life. The behaviors, the threats, the physical violence, I've been through a lot of that stuff. But if he goes to another teacher, or he goes out in the community and he does this thing, he's putting himself at risk. He's putting himself at risk for jail, and he's putting himself at risk for harm. So, I have to deliver the consequence, if you will. Now, how do you do this as a Course in Miracles student? And I'm challenged by this as well. But, the honesty part comes through. Right? Be consistent in thought, word, and deed. And I wasn't angry with this young man. I didn't hate him. I didn't, feel judgment toward him. I just felt like I needed to deliver the love. I still do see this young man as a holy child of God. He is a holy child of God. And to tell you the truth, he does have so much potential. And he has so much energy, and he's smart, and he advocates for himself. He really does a good job of that. He's just, learned through his environment how to do it in some ways that are unhealthy. And we have to help him advocate in a way that is respectful to other students as well. So, this is what I've done. So the Spirit is showing me this. Now, the other thing that has helped is also, we talk about this in A Course in Miracles, is that we oftentimes have people in our lives that show up, that help us with this. And this year I'm working with a work colleague who specializes for 30 years in working with students with emotional disturbances and severe behavioral challenges. And we're teaching a class together. And she set up the class so that there's behavioral consequences for the students, much more structured than I ever had. And so I'm learning about this as well, and I have to just be open to it. And so, clearly Spirit is telling me this. Now, as we say this, the thing we have to understand is, Course in Miracles students, we have to understand that we all have people in our lives whose behaviors challenge us. Okay, we just have to be honest with that. And we do have to respond. And sometimes we have to respond in an honest way, right? We have to respond with a firm boundary. We have to respond with a firm response. And all the Course in Miracles is saying to us is that don't judge the person, forgive the person, still love the person, still see them as a holy child of God, but you have to deliver the love too. You know, sometimes the love comes in the form of a hug, and sometimes the love comes in the form of, you know, delivering a consequence. Now, do I escape from this kind of introspection? You know, what the Course talks about is that when you see something going on in your outside external life, it's also a reflection of your inside life. And there's something also going on. It's a projection, right? So I was thinking to myself, yeah, hey, what do I need to look at from my part? You know, and so one of the things that I realized that I need to look at is, you know, some of my own, you know, kind of behavior. Like, now that I'm having, this is a new skill that I'm learning, delivering consequences. And it's hard. And so one of the things I've had to learn is that before I was kind of maybe super empathetic, and now sometimes I feel like I'm the drill sergeant, you know? And so I'm like really firm and like, I'm like, yes, I need to do this, you know? But I also have to balance it. Like, I still have to be compassionate and at the same time deliver what I need to do. So that's one thing that I've also learned. But I also, you know, it's funny, I relate to Holy Spirit through Jesus. So, you know, when I'm doing my meditations or I'm doing my reflection, Jesus is saying, yeah, form and content. So what behavior do you need to look at, Mr. Graham? And I was kind of looking at that. And one of the things that I'm struggling with a little bit is my relationship life. And it's nice living with Reverend Tony because, you know, it's funny. You would think that most of the time Reverend Tony and I are talking about high-minded Course in Miracles things when we run into each other in the kitchen, but, you know, mostly we talk about normal things, you know? We talk about how work's going, we talk about relationships, we talk about the Miracle Center, you know, how the Miracle Center is going, and because since I'm on the board, I'm involved with that kind of stuff. And I shared with him this week that, yeah, you know, I'm struggling dating. You know, I'm a single gay man, and I have troubles, you know. It's like I have needs like anybody else does. I have intimacy needs, the needs to connect, the need to share, the need to feel connected. And I've been having a hard time doing that, you know. And some of it, you know, has to do with the modern era of social media. You know, and it's so funny that, you know, the way Spirit works is that I was reading an article on, Facebook. Somebody quoted this article this morning, just before my talk, and this is the name of the article. Why didn't gay rights cure gay loneliness? Okay? And what this article was fascinating, and it covered many different avenues of gay relationships. And I really related to it. And one of the things is just that, you know, the social apps are the way that most men now connect. And it used to be, when I first came out, we connected socially through organizations, through the bars, through other things. But now they say 70% of gay men connect through these social apps. And as a consequence, what's happening a lot is the connections are more sexual, and then they're done. It's one and done, if you will, you know. And you know, and you find yourself, and I find myself doing this. It's almost like compulsion, where you are connecting to it, and someone's connecting with you, and you get, oh, it's excited. I get this little red light that shows up or something, you know, and it's like a reward system, you know, and so on and so forth. So what I'm realizing with this is that you know, I have kind of become conditioned somewhat by the social media relationships, and that's a little bit interesting for me because wasn't my natural state of being, but you know, the world changes and we have to change to it. So, you know, I think that's what Jesus is really saying to me. It's like, Peter, be real and heal. You know, I go out on dates. You know, don't just do the hookup thing and hope that something's going to come from that. You know, go out, and be an authentic person. And a lot of times when I do meet people, I am authentic and so on and so forth. It's not that as much of the problem, but it is certainly about showing up and being honest and being consistent in thought, word, and deed. So that's what Spirit has to talk to me about. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is controversy. Okay, and this one is a little bit of an interesting thing for me. And the reason I want to talk about controversy, because it relates to me for honesty. And what I find is that in our culture right now, and in my own life, and even sometimes in Course in Miracles communities, in our own communities, I find that we can get distracted by controversy. For me at work, it has to do with the bureaucracy. I'm constantly fighting the bureaucracy. I'm constantly fighting an administrator. I'm constantly fighting people because they're doing things that I think are harmful to the teachers that I supervise or the students that I work with. Now, of course, politics is controversial. Just this week, President Trump had three members of his campaign staff that were working with him and who were indicted. And that's all the rage now. Is this going to end in him being impeached or resigned or criminally investigated? And that's all that stuff is there, and there's the right wing response and there's a left wing response and so on and so forth. But for me to invest in that controversy, it doesn't help me. I don't feel better by doing it. What can I do? I can vote. I can send a letter. I can pray, like we do pray on the healing list, and that's what I can do about that situation. The other thing that I have to say that bothers me sometimes is the controversies that take place in the Course in Miracles community, and even sometimes take place here in the Community Miracle Center. And that's over this whole controversy over the real world and whether, which course interpretation is true or not true. And I have to say that it makes me not want to be a course student. It makes me want to go away from our community. It feels divisive to me. And the reason for that is because, and I quote Bill Thetford on this, who was one of the original scribes of the Course. He says, if you find yourself in division with a Course student over a page in the textbook, rip out the page and throw it up. What we're supposed to be doing, folks, is healing here. And if we use the Course in Miracles as a divisive, if we're getting into the controversy over the interpretation of the Course, I think we're mostly off base there. I think we need to just focus on our healing. Be real and heal. Now this is what the Course in Miracles said. I took this quote from the Idols of Sickness. Only at the altar of God will you find peace. You can give up the god of sickness for your brothers. In fact, you would have to do so if you give him up for yourself. And if you accept him, you will bow down and worship him because he was made as God's replacement. And so, kind of what this quote is saying, let's not bow down to the god of dishonesty, inconsistent behavior in thought, word, and deed. Let's not bow down to controversy. Let's not bow down to the egoic world that wants to distract us from our own healing. I think if we want to be real and heal, we need to be honest, we need to be consistent, and we need to show up for our brothers and sisters and see them as holy children of God. And that's my talk for today.